معتاده، نه مشکلی داره، خیلی هم آدم خوب و سالمی.
پس برای چی میخواد طلاق بگیره؟
برای اینکه ایشون نمیخواد با من بیاد.
من پدرمو نمیتونم ول کنم.
پدر ایشون آلزایمر، اون میفهمه که تو پسرشی؟
من که میفهمم اون پدرمه.
من الان تکلیفم چی میشه آقا؟
هیچی. بفهم سر زندگیتون.
Iran has certainly made a name for itself in world cinema due to the likes of Abbas Kiarostami and Jafar Panahi. But we have a new great film from Iran, and it's Separation from Asghar Farhadi. Now, Ryan, what did you think of A Separation?
Separation is a great film. Beautifully fleshed out characters, lots of sort of moral decisions and ethical questions that are raised that these characters have to go through. Essentially, it's about a father who's divorced from his wife, and he gets into an altercation with a woman who's looking after his father who has Alzheimer's. And then there's this really impactful sequence where, which really drives the plot of the movie, where he pushes the woman and she falls down the stairs while she's pregnant, and she has a miscarriage. And this scene is beautiful in the sense that it sort of carries this ambiguity where we're not totally sure who's in the right and who's in the wrong, and a lot of questions are raised that the viewer has, along with questions that the characters have as well.
Yeah, it's definitely like a chamber drama, I guess you could call it in a way, or it reminded me a lot of great kind of plays you'd read in a class, like Chekhov or whatnot. And I guess a criticism that could be lobbied at it is that maybe there's not enough style to it. But I think the direction is actually very precise and tactful. And it's not like there's these 5-minute tracking shots of people walking downstairs, but I think it keeps a tone very well. It never feels like it's straying from anything important. And the performances are excellent. I think Leila Hatami, maybe getting pronunciation wrong, who plays the wife, is incredible in this film, and I will say this, I think, kind of sexy.
Okay, I mean, that's an opinion that you can hold to your own. I think the direction holds up very well. I feel like there was a sense of, I mean, it's sort of a cop-out to say it, but a sense of realism that the director wanted to hold, and everything feels very natural, where I felt like, I mean, this could just be reading very, very much into it, but where the director's like sort of play with the space, because a lot of it felt very free. Where the characters would move around and get sort of tangled up, and like their dialogue would seem to clash, but also their movement would seem to clash in a way. There was always sort of a like a friction or something.
Yes.
It was pretty interesting.
And I think it's interesting. I mentioned Iran during the intro, and I think there is definitely something about kind of current Iranian politics in this. A lot of, like I said, those mentioned, those filmmakers, they talk about what it is like to be an Iranian. And that's something obviously that's interesting to us, because, you know, just even the image of all these women in shawls,
yeah,
that's even something that instantly makes it seem different from a lot of the cinema we watch, and we realize how there's different gender standards, and it realizes those aspects so well that it's universal, but it's specific at the same time.
Definitely, and like, I mean, there's a lot drawn, like not being able to tell the husband about certain things, and where the husband would think that this is important information for the woman to share, and a lot of issues with religion and people different religious standings in the film. But at the root of it all, both sides have their family's interest at heart, you know, which is really important to see. And I think every character in this is genuinely good.
Yeah.
Like, who have made small decisions that were poor that sort of escalated into these fairly dire consequences. But I think it's a pretty excellent film.
Yeah, nothing is in black and white in this, and I definitely think it's one of the strongest films of 2011.
Definitely, and as we know now, it's nominated for Best Foreign Language
and Best Original Screenplay,
which is a huge achievement for a foreign language film for sure.
Yeah.
Just quickly to mark on the end credit sequence, which is a complete shot in its own. If you want to talk about direction and style, that's a very stylized, using depth of field and the long take.
Yeah.
And I think it's an amazingly like chilling way to end the film. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a big recommendation for me.
And a big recommendation from me.
That's our review.
Soy Laura Guerrero, tengo 23 años. Y mi sueño es representar la belleza de la mujer de mi estado.
Okay, so next up we're looking at a Spanish language movie called Miss Bala. It's about a young girl who gets involved in a beauty pageant, but at the same time also gets involved in this whole big escapade involving the ongoing drug war that's going on. Very intense movie. I was a little mixed, but Ethan, what did you think?
Yeah, I really liked it. I think it's a very formal film. It's a lot of like silence, a lot of long tracking shots. And sometimes stuff like that, after a while, can seem almost kind of mechanical and maybe pretentious at times. But I think this movie is very assured in its direction. And I think it's interesting, too, because taking this issue, the drug war, and kind of placing this sort of cipher of a character in the middle of it, and where almost everything surrounding her is kind of completely incomprehensible, because we're just seeing everything through her eyes. I found that was a very interesting perspective to play with.
Mm-hmm. You definitely mentioned the tracking shots. Those are really good. I am a fan of a good tracking shot. My problem with it is that it felt a little unfocused at times. Like, it seemed like it was going to play up the beauty pageant angle more than it did in the end. Like, it would start off and you would think that's where it's going, and then it would kind of detour for like a half hour, and then all of a sudden she'd be back in the beauty pageant, and you're like, oh, right, this movie's about a beauty pageant. I'd forgotten a little bit.
Well, it's kind of a loose element of it in a way.
Yeah.
Like, it's just kind of like that's sort of the first impression you give her, and you think, oh, she's this kind of person, but then she's put through all these series of events, and kind of it's brought back more almost in terms of having an interesting kind of looking set piece, I find.
Mm-hmm. And it was sort of the same thing. She has this one friend who's like disappeared at the beginning of the movie. I honestly forgot about her for the majority of the running time of the movie. She like finds out something near the end, and I'm like, wait, who's that again? It just felt like there were elements of the movie that faded in and out, and it was a little incongruous for me. Overall, I did like it, but there was just that element of not unsurety, but just sort of haziness to some of the B plots.
I will say this at the end. There is I think it's a title card at the end of the film that gives statistics about the drug war. That felt a little, it didn't feel in tune with the tone of the film to me.
It felt like it didn't feel like a movie that focused on the drug war.
Yeah.
More just like one small part of the organized crime infrastructure. They didn't really do a lot involving actual drugs. I don't think they did almost anything. It felt like it was doing something a bit broader. But yeah, it felt like the mentions of the drug war were almost a little hammered in.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, just again, that title card, it just feels like the film is almost, it feels like it wants to carry this moral obligation that I think isn't in tune with the rest of the film. But it is, I think it's a really strong film. And it was nice to see, it's actually interesting a few times there's kind of some English language people.
Yeah.
It was interesting seeing James Russo, who's a character actor I'm a fan of, just show up in one scene.
It was cool seeing him just sort of pop in there, like, oh, hey, James Russo, I didn't know you were here, nice seeing you.
Yeah. So I'd recommend it. Would you?
I'm a little middle of the road. I would sort of hover in between a recommendation and a not recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the review, I guess.